You say,
It's raining, but I don't believe it's raining.
absurd, right? Yet that simple contradiction exposes one of the deepest cracks in the human mind. We often believe what we know isn't true. We deny what we see. And we trust our thoughts more than the evidence in front of us. Welcome to the strange world of George Edward Moore, the quiet philosopher who discovered that human belief is not a reflection of truth, but a war between knowing and believing. George Edward Moore was not a man of chaos or loud rebellion. He was quiet, gentle, almost painfully rational. Born in 1873 in a middle-class English family, Moore grew up surrounded by logic, literature, and religion, three forces that shaped how people understood truth. While most philosophers of his time chased grand ideas like Nietzsche's passion or Hegel's spiraling logic, Moore did the opposite. He slowed things down. He wanted to clean up the mess philosophy had become. To Moore, clarity was sacred. He once said that philosophy's duty was not to invent meaning, but to say what we mean. It sounds simple, almost boring, until you realize how few people actually do it. And from that obsession with clarity came something profoundly unsettling. A paradox that exposes the double life of our minds. One day, in the early 20th century, Moore presented a statement that sounded like nonsense.
It's raining, but I don't believe it's raining.
People laughed. Even his colleagues thought it was a mistake. But Moore wasn't joking. He was pointing to something painfully real: the disconnect between what we know and what we believe. Imagine this. You see the rain falling outside your window. You can feel it. You know it. Yet, in some part of your mind, you say,
No, I don't believe it.
That is Moore's paradox. It is the moment when your belief system refuses to align with reality, when your inner conviction betrays the truth. And this paradox, as simple as it sounds, became a mirror for one of the darkest corners of human psychology: self-deception. Because what Moore described wasn't just a logical mistake. It was an emotional one, something deeply human. We all do it every day, just in more sophisticated ways. Think of how often people say things like,
I know he's bad for me, but I still believe he'll change.
or,
I know this job is killing me, but I believe it's what I'm supposed to do.
these are the modern versions of Moore's paradox. They're not just contradictions, they're emotional survival tactics. Our minds don't always want the truth. They want comfort, control, and consistency. Psychologists later called this cognitive dissonance, the tension between conflicting beliefs. But Moore didn't need a lab to see it. He simply observed what every honest thinker eventually notices. We are not rational beings who sometimes feel. We are emotional beings who sometimes pretend to think. And Moore's paradox, though born in philosophy, became a psychological confession. Humans can know the truth and deny it at the same time, and somehow still feel coherent. Ironically, Moore wasn't a dark thinker. He actually believed in something called common sense realism. He argued that reality exists as it appears, that our senses tell us the truth. But life, as always, refuse to stay simple. Because even if the world is real, our belief about that reality is often twisted. More trusted in the physical world. The table in front of you, the sound of rain, the hand you raise to your face. He thought these were undeniable facts. But what happens when your mind doesn't trust your own senses? When you see the rain, but don't believe it's raining. That is when philosophy meets psychology, and clarity turns into chaos. Moore's paradox isn't just about weather or logic. It's about the private theater inside your mind, where knowledge and belief perform separate plays. You might know your partner doesn't love you anymore, but believe that they still do. You might know your dream is impossible, but believe that somehow it will work. And maybe you know you're not okay, but believe that pretending is enough. Moore's paradox reminds us that the mind doesn't seek truth. It seeks a story it can live with. That's why people stay in toxic relationships, chase impossible dreams, or defend lies they don't even believe in. Not because they're foolish, but because their beliefs protect their sense of self. Truth threatens identity. Belief maintains it. Moore's obsession with clarity made him a strange kind of hero, one who fought confusion, not people. He wanted us to speak honestly about what we think and believe. But honesty itself can be unbearable. If we were truly honest about what we believe versus what we know, most of us would realize we're living contradictions. We say we want truth, but we chase comfort. We say we hate lies, but live by them. We say we trust ourselves, but second-guess every feeling we have. Moore didn't call this madness, but maybe he should have. Because the ability to lie to ourselves and still function, that is both our strength and our sickness. George Edward Moore never became a household name like Nietzsche or Freud. He wasn't poetic or dramatic, but his paradox still echoes today in therapy sessions, political debates, and personal crises. Every time you say,
I know it's wrong, but I still believe it's right,
you're living Moore's paradox. You're standing in the gap between reality and belief, between what your mind knows and what your heart needs to believe. And that gap is where human consciousness truly lives. Because we don't exist entirely in truth or entirely in illusion. We live in the tension between them. Moore died in 1958, quietly, as he had lived. But his paradox outlived him, turning into a psychological mirror that refuses to fade. We like to think that believing and knowing are the same thing, but they're not. And every lie we tell ourselves is a desperate attempt to close that gap. So the next time you catch yourself saying,
I know, but I don't believe,
remember Moore, the philosopher who noticed the absurd truth hiding in plain sight. The human mind is not a seeker of truth. It is a storyteller trying to make sense of the rain. The paradox isn't a problem to solve. It's a reminder that being human means living with contradiction, to know one thing and believe another. Because sometimes, believing the lie is what keeps us alive long enough to face the truth. And that's a wrap, my dear friends. Thanks for hanging out with me. Until next time, stay awesome.